I don't even know where to begin, but maybe the moment everything shattered was in the parking lot of a baby store. It was supposed to be a normal day. I'd just come from a doctor's appointment. The baby was healthy, kicking like crazy. I was beaming. We were 5 months in, and finally past the nausea and exhaustion. My husband, Josh, had just texted me a list of potential baby names. Harper if it's a girl, Liam if it's a boy, with a little heart emoji. I smiled, tucked my phone into my bag, and stepped out of the store with a small bag of onesies in my hand. I remember the sunlight, the warm breeze, and how proud I felt walking toward my car, like the world was finally giving me a happy chapter. Then someone tapped my shoulder. A woman, maybe mid-30s, with short dark hair and a tired but serious expression. She looked nervous, almost apologetic, and said, "Sorry to bother you, but I have to ask, are you married to Josh Middleton?" My stomach fluttered. I wasn't sure if I should admit it or not. I just nodded slowly and said, "Yes." "Why?" Her face shifted like she already hated what she was about to say. And then she said it. "He can't be your husband. He's already married to my sister." At first I thought she was confused, or crazy, or lying. Anything that would make this go away. I literally laughed, a dry, confused chuckle. But she didn't flinch. She just looked at me with this exhausted kind of pity and repeated it. "He's already married. I'm not here to fight, but you deserve to know." And just like that, the ground disappeared under me. I couldn't breathe. The bag of onesies felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I wanted to scream, but instead I whispered, "That's not possible." She pulled out her phone, opened her photos, and showed me something that made my heart stop. It was Josh, standing at an altar, ring on his hand, smiling, next to a woman I didn't recognize. "That's my sister," she said. "They got married 6 years ago." I think I said something like, "That can't be real," but I don't even remember what my voice sounded like. I just remember the baby kicking inside me while my entire world started crumbling around it. And the worst part? That wasn't even the biggest lie he told me. Looking back now, the signs were there. I just didn't know what I was looking at. I met Josh 2 years ago in the waiting room of an urgent care clinic. I had a stomach bug, and he was nursing a sprained wrist from helping his neighbor move a couch. Or at least that's what he said. He was warm, funny, made everyone laugh in the waiting area. Even the nurse, who looked like she hadn't smiled all day, cracked a grin at him. He struck up a conversation with me while we waited, something about the vending machine, refusing to give him his chips. I smiled, made a dumb joke back, and somehow we were talking like old friends. He was charming in that effortless, comfortable way. Not pushy, not trying too hard. Just safe. We ended up leaving around the same time, and he offered to walk me to my car. I remember thinking it was sweet but a little old-fashioned. I liked that. And when he asked if he could call me sometime, I gave him my number without hesitation. From there, it was fast. Not love-bombing fast, more like puzzle piece fast. He remembered my favorite coffee order after the second date. He texted me good morning before I even woke up. He'd cook me dinner after long shifts and rub my feet when I complained about standing all day. My friends said things like, "He's a grown-up," and "He's the type you marry." I agreed. He was stable, had a decent job in IT, owned a condo 2 cities over, said he'd been married once, briefly, in his 20s, but it didn't work out. He told me he wanted to build a real life with someone. No games, no lies. And for once in my life, I believed someone without feeling stupid for it. When he proposed just under a year in, I said yes. Not because it was a grand gesture, it wasn't. Just a quiet dinner at home, him down on one knee with a simple gold ring. But because I genuinely believed I'd finally found someone who saw me and chose me for real. We didn't do a big wedding. He said he didn't want to make a spectacle, and honestly, I was fine with that. We got married at the courthouse, just a few close friends. He said his family couldn't travel. I didn't question it. He didn't talk about them much, and I figured it was complicated. It felt like we were building something sacred. We even had Sunday reset days, where we'd do laundry, cook meals for the week, and talk about our future like it was a blueprint. When I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified. But Josh, he smiled so big it made me cry. He held me and said, "We're ready for this." I've never wanted anything more. I believed him. I let that belief wrap around me like a blanket and keep me warm, because I had no idea what was coming next. The early months of the pregnancy were a mix of joy, anxiety, and exhaustion, like anyone's first time, I guess. Morning sickness hit me hard, and my emotions were all over the place, but Josh was perfect, or at least he seemed like it. He'd make me ginger tea at 3 a.m., rub my back while I threw up, and read every pregnancy book he could find. He even made a little spreadsheet to track the baby's size week by week. Every Sunday he'd say something like, "She's the size of an avocado," or "That's our little mango in there." He even talked to my belly. I remember thinking I hit the jackpot, that maybe, just maybe, this was what love really looked like. But then, there were the little things. The ones I brushed off because I didn't want to seem paranoid. The ones I wanted to believe were harmless, like how he'd never let me tag him in social media posts. At first, he said he didn't use it much. Then he said he didn't want coworkers up in our business. When I posted a sonogram photo, he asked me to blur out his name on the tag. Another time, I invited him to one of my best friend's birthday dinners. Just 5 of us, nothing wild. And he suddenly had to work late. That was the 3rd time he bailed on seeing my friends. When I pushed back a little, he told me I was being clingy and hormonal. I laughed it off, blamed it on the pregnancy hormones myself. He traveled a lot for work, and I hated it, especially now that I was carrying his child. But he always FaceTimed me from hotel rooms, sent pictures of his Uber Eats dinners, even screenshotted meetings on Zoom to prove he was where he said he was. And I believed all of it, because I wanted to, because it felt better to trust him than to consider that something could be wrong. We started making a list of baby names together and painted the spare room light green. He picked out a mobile that played this lullaby that made me cry the first time I heard it. I remember sitting on the nursery floor, holding that tiny thing in my hand, while Josh knelt next to me and kissed my stomach. "She's going to be so loved," he whispered. That's what killed me later, because somewhere deep down, I knew there was a wall between us. I just didn't know what it was made of yet, and I never expected it to come crashing down in the middle of a parking lot, from a complete stranger. She held her phone out like it was something sacred, like she didn't even want to show me. Like she had to. The screen lit up with a photo. A wedding, not our wedding. This one had flowers and bridesmaids, a full ceremony, people smiling like they had no idea they were part of something awful. And there he was, Josh, my Josh, wearing a black tuxedo, grinning from ear to ear, holding the hand of a woman in a white dress. A different woman, a different life. I felt my knees go weak. My first instinct was that it had to be old, ancient maybe, from that brief marriage he'd mentioned once vaguely. But something wasn't right. It was too recent. His hair was the same, his weight, even the watch he was wearing, the same one he wore yesterday at dinner. "Wait," I said, my voice trembling. This is from years ago, right?" She shook her head. "Number, that was 2 years ago. He's still married to her." "My sister. Still married? Number. No. I could barely speak. My hands were shaking so badly, I nearly dropped my bag. The baby inside me kicked, hard, like it could feel my panic. "He said she had mental health issues," the woman added quietly. "That she was unstable, that she made up stories. That's how he isolates her. That's how he gets away with it. Her name was Rachel. She told me they tried to report it once. Her sister had found texts, photos. But he always talked his way out of everything. Told people she was paranoid, manipulative, even threatened to sue her for defamation if she spoke up. She wasn't trying to ruin my life, she said. She just didn't want him to keep ruining others." "I didn't know she was pregnant," Rachel whispered. "If I had known, I would have come sooner." I asked her one question, the only one I could form through the fog swallowing my brain. "Are you sure?" She looked me dead in the eye. "They live together. I was just at their house last week, and just like that, something inside me cracked wide open. It wasn't just shock. It wasn't even betrayal yet. It was this terrifying emptiness. Like everything I had built with him had never been real. My phone buzzed, a text from Josh. "Got your avocado?" On my way home now, love you. I stared at those words like they belonged to someone else's life. I was frozen there for maybe 2 minutes before I finally turned to Rachel and said, I need to know everything, because if this was the tip of the iceberg, God only knew what was buried underneath. I barely remember the drive home. I don't even think I turned the music on. My fingers clutched the steering wheel so tightly they went numb, and every time I blinked, I saw that photo again. Josh in a tuxedo, smiling like he didn't just shatter 2 lives with one lie. When I pulled into our driveway, his car wasn't there yet. I just sat there, engine running, staring at the house we shared. The house I thought was safe. Every window, every flower pot, every inch of paint now felt like a lie painted over rotting wood. He texted me again. Traffic's a mess. Be home soon. Want Thai or pizza tonight? I didn't answer. I needed time, space. I told myself maybe, this was all some horrible misunderstanding. Maybe that woman was mentally unstable. Maybe this was some old photo she was using to hurt him. People get catfished, manipulated, falsely accused all the time, right? I wanted so badly for it to be that. I needed it to be that. So I did what I think any woman who's loved someone too deeply would do in that moment. I waited. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. One last chance to explain, one last out. When he walked through the front door an hour later, carrying takeout and humming, like the world hadn't just crumbled, I stared at him like he was a stranger. Hey babe, he said. Got both, couldn't decide. I said nothing. I just sat on the couch, holding my phone, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would give me away. He furrowed his brow. Everything okay? That was his thing. Everything okay? Like he didn't already know what wasn't. Like it was always on me to point out the bleeding wound while he pretended it wasn't there. I looked him in the eye and asked, Who is Rachel? I wish I could describe the flicker that passed across his face in that moment. It wasn't fear. It wasn't guilt. It was calculation. Like his brain hit a switch and instantly started assembling a story. Rachel, he said, setting the bag down. What are you talking about? I didn't blink. Rachel, she says you're married to her sister, that you never got divorced, that you've been living a double life. He blinked, then laughed. Oh my God, he said. She's nuts. I told you about this before. My ex's family is obsessed with me. They've been pulling this stuff for years, trying to ruin my relationships, make me look like a cheater. She's been stalking me since 2018. This is her thing. It was smooth. Too smooth. The way he stood relaxed, his voice calm, just the right amount of frustration without going overboard. Like he'd rehearsed it. She showed me your wedding photo, Josh. That got him. For a fraction of a second, he froze. Then he shook his head. Photoshop. I'm serious. She's made fake wedding announcements before, sent them to my job, even posted one online saying I'm a predator. She's sick, babe. Please don't let her get inside your head. He walked over and knelt in front of me, placing his hand on my knee. I flinched. Hey, he said gently. You know me. I've never lied to you. This baby, this life we're building, this is real, okay? Don't let some bitter woman take that away from us. And in that moment, some twisted part of me almost believed him. Because the idea that I'd been that blind, that stupid, was too much to bear. But something inside me had already shifted. A voice I'd silenced too long finally whispered, You need to find out the truth. For yourself. I didn't sleep that night. Josh lay next to me, snoring softly like a man with a clear conscience. His arm was draped across my waist, like it had been 100 times before. But now it felt foreign, heavy, like I was being held down by a lie. My eyes stared up at the ceiling in the dark, and all I could think was, what if she's telling the truth? So I started looking, quietly, carefully. I didn't want to tip him off. Not yet. I knew that if he was lying, he was good at it. Too good. If I confronted him again without proof, he'd twist it, make me feel crazy. Gaslight me until I didn't trust my own memory. I waited until he left for work the next morning. As soon as his car pulled away, I went straight to his desk. Josh was the type to lock his laptop, smart, paranoid maybe, but his old iPad, that was in the drawer, unlocked. At first there wasn't much. Notes, news apps, some old photos of us. But when I dug into the cloud account he'd forgotten to log out of, the one tied to his email, I found folders, private folders. One was titled Old Stuff. Inside were photos, dozens of them. And there she was, the woman from the wedding photo. They were in Paris together, Cancun, Aspen. She was laughing in his arms, wearing a ring, the same ring I wear now. I felt my hands go cold. My eyes blurred from the shock. I had to grip the desk to stay upright. This wasn't just a past relationship. These weren't memories he'd left behind. The timestamps were recent, some of them just a few months old. While I was pregnant, while I was throwing up in our bathroom and he was rubbing my back, I found an email chain too. Her name was Vanessa. They shared a joint bank account. They had a mortgage together in another state. He wasn't living with a crazy ex. He was still living a whole second life. He'd told me he traveled for work every other weekend. That was always the deal. Client meetings, he said. West Coast projects. He never liked when I called during those trips, said it made him look unprofessional, but now it made sense. He wasn't in meetings. He was at home, with her. I wanted to scream, throw his laptop out the window, drive to wherever she lived and blow everything up. But I didn't. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about betrayal. It was about my baby, our child. I needed to protect us, legally, emotionally, financially. This wasn't just cheating. This was deception on a level I couldn't even wrap my head around. I sat there for hours, shaking, staring at proof that the man I married, the father of my child, was a complete and total stranger. And then I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him again until I had everything. Because next time, I wasn't going to ask questions. I was going to end it. I stared at my phone for hours before I finally typed out the message. Hi, Vanessa. I know this might sound strange, but I believe we both need to talk. It's about Josh. Please don't ignore this. I'm not here to hurt you. I think he's been lying to both of us. I almost didn't send it. I thought about deleting it a dozen times, but some invisible force, maybe instinct, maybe rage, pushed my finger to hit send. No response, not that day, not the next. I started second-guessing myself. What if she knew and didn't care? What if she was the real wife, and I was just the side project? But on the third day, while I was sitting on the nursery floor folding baby clothes, I suddenly hated the sight of. I got a reply. Call me, please. She included a number. I stared at it like it was radioactive. I called. She answered on the first ring. Her voice was tense, cold, controlled, like she'd been bracing for this moment for a long time. You said you're married to Josh? She asked flatly. Yes, I whispered. Since last year, I'm pregnant. There was a long pause. Then she said, I knew it. I fucking knew it. And just like that, the dam broke. Vanessa told me everything. She and Josh had been married for 6 years. They lived together in Raleigh, North Carolina, a city he always claimed to be commuting to for work from ours. He told her he traveled for contracts. Same excuse, different woman. They had no kids, but she thought they were trying. Josh told her they'd have a family once work settled down. She said he even saw a fertility specialist with her. Faked concern, played the doting husband. He always brought her flowers when he came home from trips, the same ones he brought me. She asked if I had pictures, proof. I emailed her everything I had. The wedding certificate, sonograms, texts, even the onesie I custom ordered with Daddy's favorite embroidered on it. Vanessa cried. I cried. We were strangers, connected by the same cruel puppet master. Two women who thought we were living completely different lives, until we realized we were sharing one big, elaborate lie. What are you going to do? She asked after a long silence. I didn't know yet, but I knew what I wasn't going to do, sit in silence. I'm not letting him keep getting away with this, I said. She didn't speak for a moment. Then she said, if you're planning something, I want in. That was the moment I stopped feeling alone. And for the first time in days, I felt something other than heartbreak. I felt purpose. Vanessa and I became co-conspirators overnight. We weren't friends, not yet, but we were bound by something deeper than friendship, a shared devastation, a mutual rage, and a quiet, burning need to take back control. We started with the basics, timelines. She emailed me copies of her travel calendar from the last few years. I matched them up with his business trips. It was horrifying how neatly it all fit. Every weekend he was supposedly in Denver for work, he was with me. Every time he told me he had a 3-day seminar, he was celebrating anniversaries with her. He even sent us the same vacation photos, just cropped differently. I had a shot of him on a beach in the Bahamas with his feet in the sand. She had the same one, zoomed out with her in the frame. It was all so calculated, so efficient. I don't even know how he kept it all straight in his head. 2 wives, 2 lives, 2 women who thought they were his only one. And both of us had believed every word. Vanessa told me about a friend of his, Greg, who had always seemed in the know. A co-worker, supposedly. But when I asked Josh once about the same Greg, he claimed he barely talked to him anymore. Weird. So we checked his LinkedIn, found Greg, found his wife's Facebook, and buried in her family BBQ album was a photo of Josh with Vanessa from just a month ago, smiling, holding hands, like he wasn't also painting a nursery with me the same weekend. The thing that haunted me most? He looked happy in both lives. He didn't seem like a man carrying guilt. He looked like a man who had it perfectly figured out. That made me sick. Vanessa was quiet on the phone one night before bed, and then she said something I'll never forget. He could have just left me. If he didn't love me anymore, he could have walked away. But he didn't. He wanted everything, like we were things to collect. I couldn't speak because I felt the same. We started building a shared folder. Photos, documents, timestamps, emails. Vanessa had access to their home office, so she found tax returns that listed him as head of household, filed separately from ours. He used different accountants, different emails, different phone numbers. This wasn't sloppiness, this was strategy. I even found out that the name he used with her was slightly different, Joshua W. Middleton. With me, he dropped the middle initial. It was a subtle way to dodge things like marriage certificate cross-checks and bank alerts. This man had built a system. Vanessa and I agreed. We'd confront him, but not just emotionally, legally. We needed a plan, one that wouldn't let him escape through some loophole. "You get the baby," she said, "but I want the last word." I smiled for the first time in days, because suddenly I wasn't broken. I was preparing for battle. The days leading up to the confrontation felt unreal, like I was floating through someone else's life. I still cooked. I still folded baby clothes. I still answered emails and rubbed lotion on my stomach when it got itchy. But underneath it all, I was unraveling. I rewatched our wedding video, not because I missed him, but because I needed to see the lie in motion. The smile he gave me at the altar, the way he kissed my hand when we exchanged vows, the words he whispered when he thought no one else could hear. "You're my forever." I studied his face, every twitch, every blink, and I realized something that sent a chill down my spine. He wasn't lying to me. He was lying with me, like we were both in on it, like I was a willing participant in his fantasy. I went through our photos after that, the trip to Savannah, the beach weekend, the ultrasound appointment where he cried and said he couldn't believe he was going to be a dad. In every single one, he looked genuine, relaxed, like a man in love. And that's what broke me all over again. Because if he could look like that with me while loving someone else, then what did love even mean? I kept asking myself one question: was any of it real? And the terrifying answer, maybe not. Maybe I wasn't his wife. Maybe I was just a role he was playing, a performance he perfected so well. Even I couldn't tell where the mask ended. Meanwhile, Vanessa and I kept planning. She reached out to a lawyer who specialized in domestic fraud and bigamy. Apparently, it wasn't as rare as people think. Men like Josh build double lives with chilling precision, especially if the women live in different states, like we did. The lawyer told us to gather as much proof as possible before confronting him. We had to protect ourselves, especially me, with the baby. I started taking screenshots of everything: our text messages, our bank statements, even the Target registry we made together. The little things, the evidence that he wasn't just messing around. He was building families like they were disposable. We agreed to confront him in person, not a dramatic ambush, not some Jerry Springer mess, but a quiet, private meeting where we'd end the performance. Vanessa would fly in. I'd set it up. He'd think it was just dinner. He'd think he was coming home to his wife and unborn child. Instead, he'd walk into a room where both of his worlds were waiting, and this time, he wouldn't be able to lie his way out. I told Josh I wanted to cook for him, something special, just us. No takeout, no phones. Just quality time, I said. He smiled, kissed my forehead, texted me from the car on his way home that night. Can't wait to see you and baby, love you. Vanessa was already inside. We planned everything down to the minute. She parked around the corner and came in through the back door 20 minutes before he was due. I cleared a space in the guest room and told her to wait there. When I gave the signal, she'd walk out. I didn't feel nervous. I felt numb, focused, like every ounce of emotion had been wrung out of me in the days leading up to this moment. I wore the dress he always complimented, the one he said made me look like the mother of his child. I didn't do it for him. I did it because I wanted him to see me when the mask came off. He came in humming, holding flowers, pink and white lilies, the same ones he used to bring Vanessa. "Hey, gorgeous," he said, leaning in to kiss me. I stepped back. He paused, confused. "What's wrong?" I looked at him for a long moment, let the silence stretch. Then I said calmly, "There's someone I want you to see." His eyebrows lifted. He looked around, maybe expecting one of my friends, or a surprise family visit. He had no idea. I turned toward the hallway and said, "Now." Vanessa stepped out slowly. She looked different than she did in the pictures. Not smaller or weaker like I expected, stronger, like someone who had nothing left to lose. Josh's smile froze. He blinked, once, twice, then again. "Vanessa," he said, voice cracking, What are you?" She cut him off. "Save it, we know, about everything." The silence in the room was suffocating. He opened his mouth, then shut it, looked at me, then her, then me, again. Like his brain couldn't decide which script to follow. "Okay," he said finally, holding up his hands like he was being arrested. "Just, please, let me explain." I laughed. Actually laughed. I couldn't help it. "Explain," I asked. "Which part?" "The secret marriage, the 2 homes, the baby you made while pretending to be committed to both of us." His voice cracked. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Josh?" Vanessa snapped. "Enlighten us." He started pacing, mumbling about how he never meant to hurt anyone, how things spiraled, and how he loved both of us in different ways. I thought I'd feel rage in that moment. I thought I'd want to throw something, scream, hit him, but all I felt was emptiness, like he was a stranger, like I'd already let go of him before he ever walked through the door. "We have everything," I said. "The records, the emails, the photos, your little trail of lies. It's all been sent to an attorney." His face went pale. "We're pressing charges," Vanessa added. "Bigamy's a crime, Josh. You didn't just break our hearts, you broke the law." He looked at me one last time, eyes glassy. "You were everything to me," he whispered. "You still are." I shook my head. "Number I was your mirror, the one you used to admire yourself in. But you were never really looking at me." Vanessa turned and walked out first. I followed. We left him standing there, surrounded by the life he built on top of our bodies, like a house made of ash. And this time, we didn't look back. The silence in the house after he left felt louder than any fight we could have had. It was like walking through the ruins of a war zone. Every room held a memory that now felt poisoned. The couch where he kissed my belly, the stove where he burned pancakes trying to impress me. Even the freaking nursery smelled like him. I boxed up his clothes that night. Every shirt, every hoodie, every reminder. I didn't cry. Not at first. I just kept moving. Like if I stopped, everything would come crashing down. But I did cry eventually. It hit me around 2 a.m. when I found the baby book we started together. On the first page, he'd written, "To our little miracle, you were loved before we even knew your name." I sank to the floor and sobbed until I couldn't breathe. Because he meant it. That's what made it worse. Josh wasn't just pretending, he was living it. And yet, none of it stopped him. Not the vows, not the pregnancy, not the love he claimed to feel. That's when I realized something. He didn't just lie to me. He lied to himself too. The fallout came fast. Vanessa and I filed a joint complaint. Our lawyer sent cease and desist letters to his workplace, his family, and both sets of lawyers. We weren't just going after a divorce. We were going after justice. Josh tried calling me, dozens of times. Voicemails, emails, even a handwritten letter left in my mailbox. In it, he said he was sick, that he needed help, and that none of this was supposed to happen. He begged to be part of the baby's life, said I was punishing a child for his mistakes, that he'd change. I didn't respond. Instead, I had my lawyer draft a parenting plan. Supervised visitation only, no contact with me, and mandatory paternity testing and psychological evaluation before anything could move forward. Vanessa and I kept in touch during the process. She was navigating her own battle, splitting assets, freezing accounts, hiring a forensic accountant to make sure he hadn't funneled money between us. We weren't victims anymore. We were survivors, builders of something new, something that didn't involve begging a broken man for truth. But it wasn't easy. I lost sleep. I lost trust. I lost the version of my life I thought I had. There were days I stared in the mirror and didn't recognize myself. Days I wondered if this baby would hate me for not keeping their father around. But there were also days I looked down at my belly and whispered, "We're gonna be okay." Because even if Josh tore everything apart, he didn't get to take me with him. Vanessa called me 2 weeks after the confrontation. She sounded lighter, tired but steady, like someone who had finally stopped bleeding, even if the bruises were still visible. "He's gone," she said simply. "Moved out last night, left half his stuff, took the rest while I was at work." I expected her to be emotional, but she wasn't. Not in the way I thought. She was resigned, like she'd already mourned him before he even walked out the door. I thought it would hurt more, she admitted. But honestly, I just feel clean, like I've been holding my breath for years and finally exhaled. I knew that feeling. I felt it too, when I finally took off my wedding ring. I remember holding it in my palm, staring at the tiny scratches in the band. It looked so solid, just a smooth gold circle. But it was hollow, just like everything he promised. Vanessa's divorce process was moving fast. Her lawyer found documents Josh had forged, financial signatures, fake addresses, even a second P.O. box in another state. She had more than enough to nail him in court, and she did. 3 months later, she sent me a photo of the judgment. Dissolution granted, assets frozen pending restitution, civil charges pending. "He's finally getting what he deserves," she wrote. And he was. Josh had been fired from his job after the complaint. His dual lives violated so many HR policies, it wasn't even a question. Vanessa's lawyer had sent the company a packet of evidence. They acted fast, gone, just like that. And the kicker? Turns out there was a third woman. I didn't find out from Josh. I found out because she messaged me, a woman named Brianna. She found us through social media, said she'd been seeing Josh for about a year, thought he was single. No marriage, no kids, just bad exes. He'd told her he wanted to start over, move in together, get a dog. Same routine, same lies. When she found out about me and Vanessa and the baby, she said she threw up. Literally, in her office bathroom. We didn't judge her. How could we? We'd all been sold the same fantasy by the same master manipulator. Josh had built his whole life like a house of cards. It was only a matter of time before it all came down, and it did. I won temporary full custody of my baby after the birth. No visitation, no contact. The courts agreed he was a flight risk and a danger to our emotional well-being. Vanessa and I stopped talking every day, but we stayed connected. We sent holiday photos, baby updates, shared legal advice. I joked once that we were trauma sisters. She laughed but added, "Nah, we're co-survivors of the same storm." That stuck with me, because that's what we were, 2 women who got caught in the same hurricane. But we didn't drown. We built lifeboats out of broken pieces and started paddling forward. People don't talk about the quiet after betrayal. They talk about the rage, the confrontation, the fallout, the dramatic parts that make for good stories. But what they don't tell you is how empty it feels afterward. When the adrenaline fades, and you're left alone with the ruins. I didn't bounce back quickly. I wish I could say I did, that I dusted myself off, found peace, moved on. But the truth is, I had days where I couldn't even get out of bed. I'd stare at the ceiling and think, how did I not see it? The shame was like a second skin. Even though I knew he was the liar, I still blamed myself for being too trusting, too naive, for wanting so badly to believe in love that I ignored the faint knock of doubt when it came. So I started therapy. My first session, I didn't even know what to say. I cried for the first 15 minutes straight, while the therapist just handed me tissues and waited. When I finally spoke, all I could say was, I don't know who I am without him. And that terrified me, because I'd made him the center of my world, my future, my family, my identity. And now, without him, I felt hollow. But therapy helped, slowly. We worked through the trauma, the gaslighting, the quiet, sneaky ways he made me question myself. The fact that what he did wasn't just betrayal, it was psychological manipulation. And over time, the guilt started to loosen its grip. I took small steps. I unfollowed mutual friends, changed my number, told people who asked that he was no longer part of our story. I started saying our instead of his, me and the baby. It was just us now. And you know what? That started to feel like enough. I went to prenatal yoga, not to heal, but just to breathe. I let strangers hold space for me when I couldn't do it for myself. I cried during the meditations, quiet tears, but they helped. And I talked to my baby every night, not about Josh, not about what happened, but about what was coming. You're going to be okay, I'd whisper. We're going to be okay. Because I was starting to believe it. Not every day, but some days. And that was a beginning. Labor started just after midnight, 3 days past my due date. I was alone in my apartment, watching some stupid reality show, half asleep on the couch, when I felt the first contraction. It was dull at first, like menstrual cramps, but steady. I sat up and instinctively placed my hands on my belly. Okay, baby, I whispered. It's time. I grabbed my hospital bag, already packed weeks ago, called the car service, called my doula, called no one else. There was a time I imagined Josh holding my hand in that delivery room. He'd said he couldn't wait to meet our little girl. Said he wanted to be the first one to hold her. Said he'd cry. Said he'd never leave. But now, the idea of him in that room made my skin crawl. I didn't even tell the hospital he existed. As far as the paperwork was concerned, this baby had me, and that was enough. Labor was brutal, 13 hours. I screamed, sobbed, begged for relief. But through every wave of pain, I kept hearing one voice in my head, my own. You can do this. You're stronger than what he did to you. And then, she was here, my daughter. They placed her on my chest, slick and warm and screaming her first scream. And I swear, the second I looked into her eyes, the whole world cracked open. She didn't look like him. She looked like me, my nose, my cheeks, my lips. She was mine. I didn't cry the way I thought I would. I just stared at her, stunned, like I couldn't believe something this pure came from something so broken. And yet, there she was. The nurse asked if I wanted to list a father on the birth certificate. I didn't even hesitate. No, I said, just me. They nodded and moved on. No judgment, no questions, just quiet understanding. In the recovery room later, I held her against my chest and whispered the truth. You were made in lies, but I promise you I will raise you in truth. That night, as she slept in her bassinet beside me, I stared at the ceiling and cried. Not for Josh, not even for what I lost. I cried because I was proud, because I had survived, because I had brought something beautiful into a world that had tried to break me. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a mother. The first weeks after bringing her home were a blur of exhaustion, diapers, and those long, endless nights where the world feels too quiet and your thoughts get too loud. She was a good baby as far as newborns go. Slept in 2 to 3 hour stretches, cried when she needed something, but settled quickly when I held her close. She loved skin-to-skin contact. Her little body would mold into mine like we were puzzle pieces meant to fit together. But in the stillness, when she finally slept and the house fell silent, that's when it hit me hardest. He wasn't here. Not to hold her, not to rock her, not to cry with me over how tiny her fingers were, not to whisper promises in the dark like I used to imagine he would. And God help me. I missed the version of him I thought I knew. That's the part no one warns you about. The grief doesn't just come from losing the person, it comes from losing the future you built in your head. The bedtime stories, the first steps, the dance recitals, all of it, now just mine, alone. And yet, in the ache of that realization, something unexpected began to grow. Confidence. Every bottle I warmed, every diaper I changed half asleep, every late-night walk around the apartment with her crying against my chest, I got stronger. I was doing it, without him, without anyone. Some days I cried, some days I laughed, some days I did both in the span of an hour. But I never once looked at her and thought, I can't. I remembered a night 2 weeks in. She had colic and wouldn't stop screaming. I hadn't slept in 36 hours. I sat on the bathroom floor with her and just started whispering, "It's okay, you're okay, I've got you, Mama's here, I'm not going anywhere." And as the words left my mouth, I realized I wasn't just saying them to her, I was saying them to myself. Josh sent a letter around that time, handwritten, long, rambling. Said he'd seen a therapist, said he'd found God, said he wanted to be the man we both deserved. I didn't open it. I threw it in the trash unopened, because it didn't matter anymore. He wasn't a father, he was a ghost, and we were no longer haunted. I started reclaiming pieces of my identity. Not all at once and not loudly, but in small ways, taking short walks with her in the stroller, listening to music again, cooking real meals, looking in the mirror without flinching. People began to comment. "You're glowing," they said. "You look stronger." They didn't know the full story. They didn't know what it cost to get here. But I did. And I was learning to wear that strength with pride. It started with an email. A former co-worker from my pre-Josh life reached out. She'd heard through the grapevine that I'd had a baby and taken some time off. But she remembered how good I was, how sharp, how reliable, and said they were hiring for a remote position. Flexible hours, part-time to start, benefits. It wasn't just a job offer, it was a lifeline. I stared at the screen for 10 minutes before I even replied. My mind flooded with questions. Could I handle work with a newborn? Was I ready? Would it even feel the same anymore? But beneath all the doubt, something else stirred. Pride. Not the loud kind, not the look at me now type. This was quiet pride. The kind that whispers, "You've always been more than what he made you feel like." I accepted the offer. The first day back at work, I cried. Not because I was overwhelmed, though I was, but because it felt like I'd found a piece of myself I didn't realize had gone missing. I had value again. Not as a wife, not even as a mother, but as me. And that opened a door inside me I hadn't walked through in years. I started journaling. Therapy helped, but writing brought clarity in a different way. I'd jot things down while my daughter napped on my chest. Memories, fragments, raw moments. I wrote about the lies, the pain, the unraveling. But I also wrote about her. About the first time she smiled in her sleep. The way her little fingers curled around mine. The sound she made when I kissed her forehead. Every page reminded me that life didn't stop with him. It began again after him. I even started talking to Vanessa again. Not as co-survivors this time, but as two women finally starting to breathe again. She was dating someone, carefully, slowly, but she smiled when she talked about it. That gave me hope. I wasn't ready for that yet, not even close. But I was open to the idea that maybe someday, love wouldn't be something that destroyed me. Maybe it could be quiet, gentle, patient. But for now, love was a baby sleeping in the crook of my arm. And that was more than enough. Every night before bed, I whispered the same thing into her soft little ear. You saved me, just by being you. And somewhere deep inside, I felt it shift. The shame, the grief, the weight of everything he did. It didn't disappear, but it stopped defining me. I wasn't looking for revenge anymore. That part of me, the part that fantasized about ruining his life, screaming at him in a courtroom, watching him lose everything, it had quieted. But justice was different. Justice was about closure. It was about making sure my daughter's life would never be touched by the rot he carried. It was about standing up, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. My lawyer had filed the paperwork weeks ago, but the court date kept getting pushed. Finally, in early spring, I stood in front of a judge, virtually, via a courtroom Zoom, with my attorney beside me, a binder full of evidence, and a heart that was done shaking. Josh appeared on screen, pale, smaller, like the weight of his own actions had finally started to show. He didn't look like the man I married. He looked like a boy caught in a lie he no longer had the energy to explain. He didn't even speak much. His lawyer did most of the talking, tried to spin things, of course, claimed emotional distress, complex personal circumstances, and my favorite line, my client deeply regrets the misunderstanding and has taken steps to seek professional help. A misunderstanding, 6 years of a double life, a second wife, a child on the way. And it was a misunderstanding. I didn't even flinch, because the judge saw right through him. He ruled in my favor. Sole legal and physical custody granted to me. No visitation, no contact, child support ordered, mandatory supervised evaluation before he could even petition for changes. And criminal charges for bigamy were now officially pending in Vanessa's case. It was done. I logged off the call and sat there in silence. No cheers, no vindication, just stillness. I walked into my daughter's room. She was lying in her crib, cooing softly, eyes wide and curious, like she knew something had shifted. I picked her up and held her close, my cheek pressed to her tiny forehead. "He doesn't get to touch your life," I whispered. "Not anymore, not ever." That night, I lit a candle. Something small, something symbolic. Not for him, for me. I let the flame burn while I deleted every trace of him from my hard drive. Wedding photos, text messages, audio recordings, even the videos he'd sent me from hotel rooms that were actually her living room. Gone. Because justice wasn't just served in court. Justice was in choosing peace, and I finally had it. After everything, the lies, the court, the grief, what surprised me most was how ordinary peace felt. It didn't arrive with fireworks. There was no movie moment where the clouds parted and a choir sang. It just crept in, quietly, softly, like a warm breeze through a cracked window. I'd wake up to my daughter's tiny grunts on the baby monitor and feel something I hadn't felt in months. Content. We had our routine now. Morning cuddles, bottles, lullabies in the afternoon, me working from home with her babbling in the background. I'd bounce her on my knee during Zoom calls and email clients with her foot wedged in my armpit. It was chaotic, messy, exhausting, and mine. There were moments where I'd forget the storm we crawled out of, and there were moments where I remembered it all too clearly. When she'd do something that reminded me of him, a flicker in her eyes, the way her smile curled slightly on one side. My heart would stop for a second, but then she'd giggle or reach for my face, and I'd remember, she may carry his DNA, but she's nothing like him. She's her own light. I started doing little things for myself again. Things I used to love before I became his wife, or the betrayed woman, or the single mom. I planted herbs on the windowsill. I went to a book club and actually spoke up. I dyed my hair a shade darker and bought a pair of jeans that made me feel good for me, not to impress anyone else. And slowly, I stopped thinking about him. Not completely, but differently. The memory of him became dull, not sharp enough to cut anymore. Just a dusty file in the cabinet of my past. Sometimes people would ask, mostly gently, "Do you ever hear from him?" Number. He hasn't tried again since the court ruling. Maybe he knows he can't reach me anymore. Maybe he finally sees that the door is locked, bolted, and burned shut behind us. Vanessa texted me a few days ago. He tried reaching out to Brianna again. She blocked him. He's running out of places to hide. I didn't even react. I just sent her a photo of my daughter, holding a wooden spoon like a microphone, and screaming baby gibberish at the top of her lungs. We both laughed. Because this is what life is now. Not darkness, not disaster, but giggles, spoons, laundry, coffee in quiet kitchens. A little girl who knows she is safe, who will grow up knowing what real love looks like because she sees it in her mother's eyes every single day. He built a lie, I built a life, and I'm never looking back. I saw a photo of myself the other day, from before everything. It was a selfie Josh had taken of us at a farmer's market. I was laughing, mid-bite of a peach, sunglasses on my head, cheeks flushed from the heat. He was behind me, grinning, arms around my waist. We looked happy, but as I studied the image more closely, I saw something else. A woman trying hard to be happy. A woman who didn't realize she was already starting to disappear, shrinking parts of herself to fit into someone else's fantasy, smiling a little too wide, ignoring the unease just beneath the surface. That used to break my heart. Now I feel something different, compassion. She didn't know what was coming. She trusted because she wanted to believe. And there's no shame in that. Trusting someone isn't weakness, it's human. But the woman in the mirror now, she's different. Her eyes don't dart around looking for red flags. Her voice doesn't crack when she speaks. Her back is straighter, her steps more grounded. She's not looking for someone to complete her, because she's whole on her own. I've learned to forgive myself. Not him, never him, but me. For not seeing it sooner, for staying too long, for trying so hard to love someone who only knew how to perform love. I've made peace with the fact that healing isn't linear. Some days I still feel a flicker of anger. Some nights I wake up from dreams where I'm trapped in that old life again. And it takes a second to remember I'm free now. But the weight is lighter, the shame is gone. And the strength, it's everywhere. In the way I advocate for myself. In the way I protect my daughter. In the way I love, fully and fearlessly. Even if it's just me and her. People have started to say things like, "You're glowing," or "You seem different lately." I am. I'm not the woman who needed a man to define her. I'm the woman who survived one. And every single scar I carry, it's just proof that I fought and I won. Wrote my daughter a letter. Not to be read now, of course. She's still too small. All cheeks and fingers and soft breaths at night. But one day, maybe when she's older and the world starts whispering its doubts into her ears, I want her to read it and know, my girl, you were born into chaos. You didn't ask for it, you didn't deserve it, but you saved me from it just by existing, just by needing me. You will hear stories one day, maybe from me, maybe from someone else. Stories about a man who tried to live 2 lives and nearly shattered ours in the process. When you do, I want you to understand this. His choices have nothing to do with your worth. You are not made of betrayal. You are not a mistake. You are not the product of a lie. You are mine. You are love. You are the reason I learned how to stand again. I won't pretend I was fearless. I was terrified. But I faced it anyway. Every courtroom, every scream in the night, every wave of grief, with you on my hip and hope in my chest. There were days I wanted to quit, days I thought I couldn't do it, but every time you reached for me, I remembered exactly who I was, your mother, and that will always be enough. I won't tell you to be careful who you trust. You'll learn that on your own. What I'll tell you is this. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. But when you show the world who you are, never apologize for it. You are allowed to be loud, to be soft, to be angry, to be kind. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to walk away. And above all else, you are allowed to begin again. Because I did, and I will spend the rest of my life showing you that it's possible. All my love, Mom. I folded the letter and placed it in a small box on the top shelf of my closet, next to her first baby shoes and the hospital bracelet they wrapped around her tiny ankle. It's funny, really. Josh thought he broke me, but all he did was free me. He taught me how to fight. She taught me what I was fighting for. And now, as I tuck her into bed each night, humming lullabies I once sang alone in the dark, I don't feel regret anymore. I feel grateful. Because I finally became the woman I was always meant to be. And I'll never let anyone take that away again.